Tansei, I'm Chris Nachkite. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. Saskatchewan RCMP say they are still investigating a recent report of gunshots in the Big Lake Cree Nation, and if they're tied to a previous shooting that left one person dead and injured 3 others. Last Friday evening, RCMP were called to the Big Lake First Nation for a report of gunshots. No suspects were found and no one was injured. The incident comes after a shooting in that same community on December 30th that left one person dead and 3 others injured and put the community in lockdown. The victim of that shooting has been identified as 31-year-old Neil Wapistaquan. RCMP say the 2 suspects allegedly involved in the first incident were riding an all-terrain vehicle and are still at large and haven't been identified. Security has since been doubled at both entrances into Big Lake Cree Nation. Big Lake is located about 400 kilometers northwest of Saskatoon. Thousands of Pimicikamak Cree Nation residents ran in the new year in the cold. A power line snapped and plunged the remote First Nation in Manitoba into darkness on Sunday evening on December 28th. Manitoba Hydro has now fully restored power, but leaders say they're not out of the woods yet. CTV's Joseph Bernacki reports.
Pimicikamak Cree Nation Chief David Monius says this is not how his community planned on welcoming the new year. Thousands of people are out of their homes in Winnipeg hotels, and others stayed behind. They experienced severe temperatures and watched how the cold wreaked havoc on their homes.
The sad reality is that the prediction we had for leakage from the pipes and all the faucets, all the damage from the cold is actually it's starting to show itself now in the community.
Manitoba Hydro says power is now fully restored early Friday afternoon after going down Sunday evening. Monius says not everyone will be able to return home as 1,300 homes in the community are assessed for damages. He points to images and video coming in from members showing water leaks and floods. He's calling on the federal government to help with the limited number of services available to restore the pipes.
We have 8 plumbers that are doing everything they can. So we're asking for engineers, we're asking for plumbers, additional people to come in and assess, until we know the full extent of the damage that's done to our community. You're guessing, right?
In a statement Thursday to CTV News, a spokesperson from the federal government said officials and non-governmental and Indigenous organizations on the ground are working together to support the community and respond to emerging needs. Shirley Robinson said it's been a frantic time trying to help evacuees here in Winnipeg. She says it's uncertain when people from the First Nation will be able to go back.
We're going to keep people here as much as possible at this moment in time because right now we are in a crisis related to health and hazard safety.
Joseph Bernacki, CTV News, Winnipeg.
In an update to that story, Pimicikamak's Chief David Monias just announced this morning that a number of provincial, federal, and First Nation leaders will be visiting the community on Wednesday. They include Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew, Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak, Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Kyra Wilson, MKO Grand Chief Garrison Setti, MP Rebecca Chartrand, and the Assistant Deputy Minister of Indigenous Services Canada, Jennifer Wheatley. Chief Monias says there is about 4,000 residents who still have not returned home due to the frozen water system. 35 homes are currently unlivable, and 4 fires broke out in homes due to the power outage. Chief Monias is calling on Prime Minister Mark Carney to deploy the Canadian military to assist with emergency logistical support, including water delivery and sanitation. A former employee of the Millbrook First Nation was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison on Friday. Dawn Ellis Abbott pleaded guilty in Nova Scotia's Supreme Court in Truro last June, where she admitted to defrauding Millbrook of more than $4 million. She had been employed there as the band's senior finance clerk from 2016 to 2019. In addition to the prison sentence, Ellis Abbott must pay back $4.5 million over the next 15 years or spend another 5 years in custody if she defaults. She also received a 25-year prohibition from having any authority over property or the money of another person. APTN's video journalist Annette Francis takes us back on the year that was in 2025. It was a year of rights back, both of the unearthed remains variety and of land back. Here's that recap.
Sharon Bacchini is now deceased, but her family continues to fight for her to retroactively get Indian status. Last April, the Bacchini family gathered at Ontario's Court of Appeal in Toronto. They were there for an appeal hearing in their mother's case. Steve Bacchini says it's been an ongoing battle to regain his mother's status.
And I'm nervous, and I hope justice prevails here.
Steve first applied for status for his mother in 1998. She was awarded status in 2007, but 2 years later she was deregistered by the registrar at what was then known as Indigenous Affairs because her grandfather accepted Métis script. Sharon Bacchini died, waiting to be reinstated. Steve says his mom would be proud they're continuing her fight.
She'd be excited, nervous, and happy that, you know, her story's getting out.
The family's attorney, Lucas Lung, is feeling positive about the appeal hearing.
We had a good hearing today. We had a very, very active panel. All three justices had a lot of questions for both sides. And this is a case that raises a lot of issues. It raises a lot of important issues.
Lung says a decision could take months. Further east of Toronto, work at a construction site in July was put on hold. Ancestral remains were found at the proposed parking lot at the Ontario Power Generation head office in Oshawa, Ontario. According to a statement from Ontario Power Generation, or OPG, a bone fragment was found during archaeological work at the site. Several area First Nations say OPG and its contractor did not follow the proper Heritage Act procedures. According to Alderville First Nation Chief Tainer Simpson, the evacuation started without an archaeological assessment.
We asked for a stop to the excavation. There were already soil piles on site. So the proponent, OPG, agreed to halt everything, and they also agreed to sift all of the piles that were there. So it was estimated that it was going to take 40 days of screening and sifting all the soil piles to do it all.
Simpson says the full scale of the destruction won't be known until all the material has been screened. The site is located near the shores of Lake Ontario at a historic area called Scugog Carrion Place.
It's where the north shore of Lake Ontario met the Trent River system, and this is where a lot of trade would happen, a lot of ceremony would happen.
According to OPG's statement, it is committed to working with the First Nations to ensure a full investigation is complete. A few hours northwest of Oshawa, Saugeen First Nations celebrated a huge victory. In August, they won the fight to be recognized as the rightful owner of a popular destination. 2 years ago, they won the battle at the Ontario Court of Appeal. And in August, the Supreme Court of Canada upheld that decision. The nice weather held off for a private community celebration on their prime beachfront property. Over 200 kilometers of it was not included in the reserve due to a surveying error in 1854. Councillor Sonia Root says it's been a fight for generations.
I was a kid. I remember my dad was on band council at that time, and he showed me where the boundary was, and he told me one day we're going to get that back. That's our beach. And he told me that, and he's been gone for a while, but today his grandchildren and great-grandchildren are here for the victory, so it feels amazing.
Councillor Randall Coggy says the next step is to get compensated for being dispossessed of the land. Coggy admits relations with the town of South Bruce Peninsula will take some time to repair.
The one thing that I think was very interesting about this case, that I think stands apart from a lot of cases, that our treaty partner actually stood with us. Canada was actually an ally and acknowledged that these lands should have been and always should have been part of Saugeen. So,
Annette Francis, APTN National News, Alderville First Nation.
We have more news after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. As we look back at 2025, APTN Edmonton video journalist Chris Stewart shows us some of the big stories from the past year from Alberta.
January saw longtime banker head Mark Carney announce his candidacy for Prime Minister in Edmonton after Justin Trudeau announced he was stepping down. Carney went on to win the federal election in April.
In these times, sending Pierre Poilievre to negotiate with Donald Trump is the worst possible idea.
In February, Everett Rain resumed a lawsuit against the former Edmonton Police Chief Dale McPhee and 4 officers after he suffered a fractured skull during a 2019 arrest. An investigation noted that the evidence warranted prosecution. However, prosecutors stayed the proceedings. Then Chief McPhee said no discipline would be handed out.
I don't know how the chief can say that a use of force that results in a skull fracture that the chief acknowledges was not proportional or necessary in the circumstances can be a matter that is not serious.
In March, Edmonton police said no charges would be laid in the death of 13-year-old Eric Omwisu. He was stabbed at an Edmonton transit terminal in February. Prosecutors said the stabbing was in self-defense. The family are seeking a judicial review of the decision not to lay charges. Also in March, an Alberta judge agreed with the decision not to prosecute an Edmonton police officer for kicking Pacey Dumas in the head in 2020. Dumas needed a section of his skull to be removed to relieve swelling in his brain.
It's been one blow after another of disappointment. If you can imagine what all of these decisions by the Crown has said is that your life doesn't matter. That's the message.
In June, the Siksika Nation in Treaty 7 territory received 2 sacred ribstones that had been in possession for over 100 years at the Canadian Museum of History in Quebec. The stones were used for meditation, prayers, and success in the hunt.
And we are looking at bringing more things home each year. We're looking at going to New Mexico, where there's a Mutugig headdress down there. In Colorado, museum there. And of course, Washington, D.C., there's things there that belong to us.
In July, Calgary police charged an officer with 2 counts of second-degree murder in the deaths of Levon Fox and Wesley Davidson in 2023. Constable Craig Stothard fired several shots during a slow-moving police chase. A year after a third of the town site of Jasper and much of its famous national park burned, APTN visited the site to see the progress of recovery and learned that recovery will take generations.
It will be a long time. The deciduous trees and our grasses and our forbs or our flowers, we are seeing those already, and those take up that lower level of the forest. But as far as seeing a coniferous tree, an adult tree, we're looking at decades.
In October, the family and supporters of Samuel Bird were at the Edmonton courthouse to demand justice for the 14-year-old, whose body was found after being missing since June. They wanted bail to be denied for Brian Farrell, who has been charged with second-degree murder in Samuel's death. His hearing has been rescheduled until February 9th.
Every child matters. Samuel Bird matters. That's what we're all here for. And I really appreciate the support that's behind me here. I don't know half of them or most of them, and I'm really grateful for them being here. I'm grateful for the car horns that go by here.
In November, the family of Natanis Marasti held a vigil in Edmonton to honor her. She has been missing since May.
It would help if somebody out there that knows something that to come forward, talk to the police, phone that number. Let us know, let them know. We'll find her.
Also in November, the federal government announced fast-tracking of potential new pipelines from Alberta to the BC coast. Coastal First Nations were quick to respond.
We will never allow oil tankers in our coastal waters because an oil spill could destroy our way of life. This MOU does not override the rights and title of Coastal First Nations on BC's North Coast, Central Coast, and Haida Gwaii. The honor of the Crown means the federal government must consult with us on a nation-to-nation basis, and Canada's domestic and international legal commitments mean they must seek our consent. We will never consent to allowing oil tankers in our coastal waters.
And that is a look at some of the biggest stories of 2025 from Alberta. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
APTN National News has only had a video journalist on the ground in Nunavut for just over 2 months. And as Justin Hardy tells us, there's been no shortage of news coming from the territory.
Coverage in Nunavut this year started in the final days of a territorial election. Nunavummiut headed to the polls to select their representatives at the end of October. Those in Iqaluit have a variety of issues they want addressed by this new government, but among their chief concerns are cost of living, housing, and immigration.
Those priorities are not necessarily consistent in every community. It will be up to each newly elected member to bring their riding's concerns to the Legislative Assembly. Before he was even sworn in, newly elected Cambridge Bay Representative Fred Peterson set his sights on addressing growing drug and violent crime in his community. Every community in Iqaluit is a flying community, and Peterson wants security at the airports.
From Yellowknife going to any of our communities, including coming here or to Rankin Inlet, there's no security screening required. You just hop on an airplane, and then, from Rankin Inlet, you can get into any Kivalliq community without security screening, and from Iqaluit, you can get into any Kikikdani community without screening too. So anybody can get into any community in Nunavut without security screening right now.
Peterson will be bringing these concerns to the newly selected government leadership. Nunavut is a consensus government, meaning there are no parties and leadership is chosen after an election by the new representatives. In November, newly elected MLAs met to swear in and select a speaker, premier, and cabinet. John Main won the premier title against opponent David Akegak. Main said the priorities of this new government will be formed collaboratively with the Assembly.
As a legislature, as a government, we have to develop our priorities together through developing our mandate. There's no shortage of issues that need addressing in terms of which ones are going to be at the top of the list. That's a group exercise that we will be going through.
During the forming of the new government, Nunavummiut received much anticipated news from the federal government. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced that a proposed new hydroelectric facility near Iqaluit would be referred to the Major Projects Office, which aims to build what the government considers nation-building projects faster. The Iqaluit Nukiksautit hydro project, which will become Nunavut's first fully Inuit-owned hydro energy station, is expected to replace diesel power in Iqaluit and save $1.9 billion in fuel costs over 50 years. PJ Akegak, who was still premier during the announcement, said it was another advancement for the relationship between the territory and Canada.
This commitment marks a major step towards Iqaluit and for Nunavut. By including the Iqaluit hydroelectric project on the list of major nation-building projects, Canada is showing that Nunavut infrastructure priorities are national priorities.
Construction on the facility could start as early as 2028, but the timeline to completion will depend on further study and input from the community. Beyond politics, Nunavut also had the chance to celebrate and share its culture with other Arctic communities and the world at large. Pan-Arctic Vision saw artists from all around the Arctic Circle travel to compete in Iqaluit. There were 3 prizes up for grabs. Icelandic punk bassist Austerish says those categories encapsulate the Arctic well.
To have something with community, the most Arctic, which is most traditional, and then the revolutionary, because this is a very political event, and we're proud to have won that category.
Those were some of the top stories to come out of Nunavut at the end of 2025. Justin Hardy, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
We now want to tell you about last week's web poll results. Over on our website, we asked, how do you feel about 2026? 23% said hopeful, 37% said worried, 28% said a mix of both, and 12% were unsure. Our next question we asked, do you think Canada has entered a post-reconciliation era? 22% said yes, 31% said no, and 47% were unsure. And our third question we asked, do you believe Indigenous patients are treated fairly in emergency rooms? 11% said yes, 49% said no, 38% said sometimes, and 2% were unsure. Thank you to everyone who voted. Go to aptnnews.ca to take part in this week's new web poll questions. We'll post them a little later this week. We have more stories for you right after the break. Stay with us. Mullallen for staying with us. St. John's -4, Charlottetown sunny and -11. Cartwright -15, La Grande River -22 and sunny there as well. Quebec City -16, Saint Jovite -12. Partly cloudy in Toronto at -1, Peterborough snow and -8. Sudbury sunny and -11, Sioux Lookout -9. Pukadawagan -20, Thompson -22. Winnipeg -7, Barons River -13. Regina -13, Estevan cloudy and -8. Sun's out in Buffalo Narrows at -18, La Ronge -18. Sun's out in Fort McMurray at -5, High Level -15. 1 in Lethbridge, Calgary -2. Showers in 7 in Vancouver, Bella Coola -3. Prince Rupert 4, Smithers -1. -41 in Old Crow, Mayo -25. -31 in Wrigley, Wati -23. Sax Harbor -32, Tuktoyaktuk -39. Baker Lake -24, Chesterfield sunny and -21. And Arctic Bay -12, Aglulik -12 as well. The new season of Hockey Night in Canada in Cree and Inuktitut starts this weekend. Watch some of your favorite teams battle it out on the ice with live commentary in languages indigenous to the lands where the modern sport was created. Get your calendars ready. Here's the new schedule.
Watch David Myungin, Puju Kusigak, and Robert Kvitok analyzed 3 games in Inuktitut. Starting January 10th, the Vancouver Canucks are in Toronto against the Leafs. January 31st, the New Jersey Devils play the Senators in Ottawa. And February 28th sees the Calgary Flames elbows up against the Kings in Los Angeles. For you Plains Cree speakers, catch Clarence Iron, Earl Wood, John Chabot, and Jason Chamakis with their play-by-plays on March 14th for the San Jose Sharks against the Montreal Canadiens. The Vancouver Canucks battle the Calgary Flames in Calgary on March 28th, and finishing April 11th with the Philadelphia Flyers against the struggling Winnipeg Jets just across the street from our studio. Join in on the fun to help revitalize Indigenous languages.
And that's your daytime newscast for this Monday. We will return in a few hours for your evening newscast. Please join us then. From our HQ in downtown Winnipeg, thanks so much for spending part of your day with us. We'll see you again. Ekse.